seems like
I just want to see if I got any emails about this. If anyone is telling me go ahead.
Bob, the webinar is live and so is YouTube.
Great, thank you. All right, let's go. Well, first of all, is there anything anyone needs to address before we go on the record? All right, let's go on the record. Good day. My name is Robert Shea. I'm the presiding officer in this case. This is the second day of evidentiary hearings in the Acushnet to Fall River Reliability Project. And we would like to start off. Ms. Riley, our intervener, has some questions for Ms. Woriski and Mr. Newhall. So why don't we start off, Ms. Riley? Go ahead with your questions, please.
Thank you very much. This is in reference to CNA E41. I'd like to read the testimony, if I may. The companies were encouraged and did contact Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife September 14th, 2022, where it was expressed that the loon releases under a loon research grant have now been
I'm sorry, I
completed.
can't understand you. Where it was expressed that the what?
That the loon releases under a loon research grant have now been completed in southeastern Massachusetts. I'd like to ask the company, what's the company's position? Is the company's position that the common loon translocation project?
I'm sorry, can you slow down for your reading? I just can't understand you. Is the company's
Sure.
position?
Is the company's position that the loon translocation project is complete, or that they have simply completed translocation releases and are continuing to monitor for the loons returning, proliferation of the species and breeding? I just want to clarify the company's position about the ongoing research.
Yeah, the conversation that we had with, I believe his name was, I'm trying to pull up, it was Lucas Savoy.
Lucas Savoy.
Wait, just a moment. I can only take one person at a time. It was E.
I'm sorry.
His name was?
I believe the gentleman's name was Lucas Savoy from the Biodiversity Institute, who was overseeing the loon restoration grant that was ongoing. In the brief conversation that I had with him, he had indicated that that grant had been exhausted and that there was no additional work that they were taking on to ensure the loons were going to be further either assessed or monitored. That's not to say that Natural Heritage and others, I believe the town is still working on ensuring their survival. We've done our own assessment and conversed with Natural Heritage on whether they know of those nesting locations, and it was never determined where those nesting locations were located within the reservoir. With any best practice that we do, we would, our monitors will be out on site in advance of construction, monitoring and identifying, any sort of nesting or breeding areas. So the likelihood of us finding that in advance of going to construction is likely high.
I'm not sure whether or not it's possible for me to submit an email dated October 19th, where Lucas is talking about his current status of the project, but it is ongoing, the monitoring process. So I just wanted to clarify that it is an ongoing research. They've just stopped the releases. They're monitoring for the outcomes of the project.
Okay, Ms. Riley, so tell us what your question is.
Oh, I wanted to clarify the language in the response from the companies, that it's misleading, that it makes it look like the project is completed.
Objection. I understand you might think it's misleading, but do you have a question for the witnesses?
That pretty much answered my question. The other piece
Okay.
that I have to ask is regarding the last line. However, the companies do not anticipate any adverse effects to any threatened endangered species of special concern, such as the common loon. I just wanted to ask Ms. Horsky, what was that position based on her conversation with Lucas Savoy, or was it based on research, any particular research?
Okay.
It was based on through the continued consultation with Natural Heritage.
Okay. I can submit this document where Lucas Savoy is saying they can't make that statement with any certainty. But that's all the questions I have for this particular issue. Thank you.
Okay, so you want to submit an email by Lucas Savoy.
Uh,
Okay, Mr. Rosenzweig.
I would have an objection to that.
Okay.
There's been a deadline for pre-file testimony. There's been a deadline for submission of information requests. We've responded. She's had her opportunity. This seems to be some kind of supplemental information which could perpetuate proceeding and could lead to further inquiry on what's the content of whatever she intends to submit.
Okay, Ms. Riley, yes, please go ahead.
I can just clarify that Lucas was not given permission to participate as a witness because of the funding and the ongoing relationship that he has with Natural Heritage. He would have stepped forward if he was granted permission, but he was not.
Okay, but I understand your concern, but you should know the things that you say here, you're not a witness, so they're not part of the evidentiary record. I understand.
Got it.
Listen, what I would like to do is for you to submit a motion. I know you're not a lawyer, but just put in writing, tell us what you would like to submit into the record and why, and tell us whether this information was available earlier. I mean, as Mr. Rosenzweig pointed out, there was a deadline for submitting pre-file testimony, and this email wasn't in that, but it wasn't in the pre-file testimony you submitted, but perhaps it was not available, or perhaps it was available and you didn't know about it. But give us your reasons for filing this at this time, and then Mr. Rosenzweig will have an opportunity to respond.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. I appreciate that.
Is it possible just to, I guess to just let you know, Ms. Riley, National Grid and Eversource do have biologists that are accepted by Natural Heritage on the project. So even though Mr. Savoy may not be active on the project itself, there are still biologists working for both companies who are approved by Natural Heritage to be performing those types of surveys for us.
Why is it that you believe that Lucas Savoy is no longer active on that project?
He's not active on the National Grid component of the project, I guess.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I've got.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. I believe that the next thing we're going to do is, Ms. Riley, you've offered some testimony from your expert, Ms. Davis, who is present on the screen now, and if you'd like to, basically, we discussed this a little bit yesterday. You just have to get her.
I got it.
You got it? Okay, you're all set. Well, then go ahead, please go ahead, and Ms. Davis, you'll have to take your mute off. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Davis, could you please state your name?
Just a
for the
moment.
record?
We haven't sworn the witness.
No, we haven't sworn the witness. Please, Davis, please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony that you will give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Okay.
Ms. Davis, could you please state your name and the name of your business and address for the record?
My name is Laura Davis. My business is called Limason Design, and my address of record, in fact, I just a month ago moved to Connecticut, is number 1 Cedar Hill Road, Gaylordsville, Connecticut 06755.
Thank you. And could you tell me your position in the company?
Architect and founding partner.
And in what capacity are you offering your services to the Copacut Neighborhood Association, your role?
Well, in the absence of having a professional civil engineer in the community, as a masonry specialist, who advises architects and engineers both in overall design and structural design, I have assessed the culvert pipe for safety considerations.
Great, thank you. Can you say that the materials bearing your name submitted with the Copacut Neighborhood Association discovery was compiled by you?
Yes.
And do you adopt that material as your testimony?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Would you like to make any changes to that testimony?
Yes, there's actually one significant correction, which I apologize for. When I first assessed the culvert, I recorded inaccurately the thickness of the culvert pipe, which is actually 6 inches and not 2 inches. I do apologize, but the corrosion on the north end of the pipe was so significant, I didn't see the error.
Can you tell us what you did see?
Well,
perhaps
in brief,
explain the diagram.
The diagram, yeah, okay. In brief, what I've seen is a 70-inch culvert with extensive amount of steel corrosion. In fact, in every pipe of the culvert, the pipe itself was inadequately cast in the first place. There's virtually zero cover of the steel, and most of it is eroded significantly. There are gaps on the underside of the roadway up to 5 feet in depth. Extensive erosion on all corners of the culvert pipe. There's quite some deformation of the pipe, so there's longitudinal cracking on the inside of the pipes, not significant, but there's up to like 2 inches of displacement from the deformation of the pipes. There's significant erosion, like 6 inches of erosion in the pipe itself, in the inflow and the outflow. And there's inadequate cover not only over the steel, but also inadequate road cover with, again, a lot of erosion, especially on the north side of the road. So
I just want to
essentially, I saw a
object
pipe that's past its service life.
I didn't know, I lodged an objection. I didn't know that she was going to supplement and expand her testimony. That's not the purpose of direct. Maybe that comes up in the staff's examination and that wouldn't be a problem, but
Sorry, you said maybe it comes up in what the
the staff's
staff's
examination, Mr. Shea.
Okay.
But it wasn't apparent to me that she was going to supplement her testimony, which is not the purpose of direct. She's, other than adopting that, she's limited to what she said in direct testimony.
Ms. Riley, what would you like to say?
I would allow you to rule on that.
Okay,
What's your
all right,
position?
but you don't have anything. Yeah, I understand Mr. Rosenzweig's point. There are deadlines for providing the intervener's direct case, and you did meet those deadlines, and you did provide a direct case and Ms. Davis's testimony. But what the purpose of direct here is to just say, is this your testimony? And as you did very well, do you have any changes? Okay, that's important, and it's good to get the changes down. But then to go on from there and to supplement the testimony is not really what we do. It's not our procedure. We get the testimony in writing, and then people prepare cross-examination questions. So
Duly noted.
Okay.
Duly noted.
So now that Ms. Davis you've accepted the testimony as your own. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Now, unless you've got anything sort of to, Ms. Riley, if you've got something to qualify, like, any other changes or something like that, you can ask those questions.
That I thought that's what she was just doing.
I'm just summarizing my findings, but I didn't read directly off of the report, so I apologize if there's a discrepancy.
Okay, so you're summarizing your findings. That's fine. As Mr. Rosenzweig said, it's not our custom for people on direct examination to expand upon their findings. But you summarize your findings, that's fine. Unless there's an objection, I would then turn it over to, first I'll ask if Ms. Riley, yes, go ahead.
I still have some questions.
Go ahead.
If that's okay. Do you believe the culvert is H20 rated?
Objection.
I'll let you
Perhaps,
answer.
Mr. Shea, perhaps
Yeah.
staff should start their cross-examination at this point, and we should go from there. And
That's what I was intending to do, yes.
yeah, great, thank you.
All right, why don't we do that? Staff will start their cross-examination, and then we'll go there. Ms. Riley, you have a right to do what's called redirect, which means if there's something that a statement the staff has elicited from the witness says something in response to staff's question or in response to Mr. Rosenzweig's question, you can redirect saying, just addressing that particular answer and say, okay, you can expand upon that particular answer or clarify the answer. But thank you. All right, so why don't we go, Mr. Wong, does the staff have questions for Ms. Davis?
Yes, I have a couple questions, Mr. Shea, if that's okay.
Go ahead, please. Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Davis.
Good morning.
So I had a question on the correction you made this morning about the thickness of the culvert pipe. You correcting your initial testimony of 2 inches to 6 inches. I'm wondering if you could expand on how, if it does, change your initial analysis, if it does at all.
Well, the design thickness is very important for the risk of collapse. So yes, I mean, there's less risk of the pipe collapsing, as it were, which is the very worst case possible outcome of this. So yes, the risk of collapse is quite significantly more if the error of 2 inches stands. As it is, there is much reduced risk of collapse, but still quite some pathologies indicating safety risk. And essentially the testimony that the tube is that the conditions of the culvert are under-designed still stand.
Thank you. So Ms. Riley did ask you to sort of walk through and summarize your report. So you've spoken to that a little. I don't know if you had finished that description or do you have more to add to the summary? So keeping in mind that you're not adding testimony, but do you have more to add to that summary that you had started on just now?
I feel fairly complete with the summary.
Okay. Thank you. So I had a question. I don't know if you have had a chance to look at some of the company's responses or if Ms. Riley has sent them to you, but if not, I can hold it up on the screen and point you to that. Okay. So what I'm gonna pull up on the screen is the company's response to information requests EFSB-G-6 at page 3. And if you give me one moment, it's a brief blurb. Let's see. Sorry, not this one. Let me move this away. Do you see the text in question? The Quantapug Road culvert crossing?
Yes.
Yes. So if you could, I'll give you a couple minutes to read it. And I want to get your response.
Types. I see.
So, Miss Davis, I want to get your initial reaction as to the adequacy of this mitigation, and if you were to suggest more mitigation, what would it look like?
I see. Well, I mean, for me, the mitigation of adding a steel pipe doesn't address the question, or essentially what I've written is that a licensed civil engineer needs to verify the structural integrity of the pipe and provide assurances that it can support truck and equipment traffic, that it is H20 loaded, so load rated rather. So I don't I think that this is like additional beyond that, but that's a first stipulation that needs to be addressed. I would not in this case advise a steel pipe, because the steel plate is not actually going to address the existence of significant road erosion. Again, there are cavities under the road that are quite significant. So if you add a pipe under it, it doesn't address the fact that there's massive cavitation and erosion over and around the pipe. There are risks of having a guardrail that's put in place when you already have a massive amount of erosion. I support National Grid's position to place a guardrail, because there have been instances in which boats have gone over the edge. There's quite a significant amount of traffic, believe it or not, on this road from the gun range, from the all the off-roading vehicles, and then quite a lot of sort of tourism on the northern end of the pond, which will open up considerably when the trees are clear cut on the northern end of the pond. So I think that there is a safety concern, not just for vehicles which can go over the edge, but also safety concerns for example, emergency response vehicles to the gun range or to other stranded four-wheelers out on the road, which both the local EPO, the environmental police need to respond to, and also the neighborhood association and the neighborhood members regularly respond to in the present.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. I appreciate your speaking from your authority with regard to masonry and so on. I was wondering if the latter part of your testimony about the traffic and so on, is that backed up from just anecdotal evidence, or are there studies about the amount of traffic going in the area?
I haven't seen no studies. I don't think that we have the resources for that in the neighborhood, but living right here on the road, the vehicles often park right 100 feet down from the house. So this is anecdotal. It is observational. I'd love to see some study about the traffic patterns as they've increased as the fishing rights have opened up, and the traffic patterns as they would increase when there's a lot more essentially beach front on the northern end of the pond.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Appreciate that response. I want to clarify for the record, and Ms. Davis, you had corrected yourself in the end, that we were talking about the company proposing a steel plate instead of a steel pipe on top of the culvert.
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
No, you're okay.
No. Yeah. Apologies for my mistake. Yeah.
Yeah. No worries.
Just to clarify again that first, like as an explanation, when you have to have an overload over a pipe for safe pipe conditions. There's insufficient, as the report states, there's insufficient overload over the pipe. A plate on the surface would assist in the distribution of the loads, but it doesn't address any of the existing safety conditions in and around the pipe, or the erosion, or also any of the environmental aspects of continued erosion in a wetlands area. So there are standards for pipe culverts in wetlands areas, and this pipe does not pass those standards to my knowledge.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. So something that you stated earlier, that your testimony, and correct me if I'm wrong, is stating that you believe that a licensed civil engineer needs to assess the condition before that road is used for any construction traffic. Is that your testimony?
Yes, correct. And I would personally advise that it's a licensed civil engineer that's not employed by the company, because there's just an inherent bias.
Thank you. So what you're not recommending is necessarily a reconstruction of that culvert, unless required. Is that safe to say?
I mean, I provide structural design and design advice to civil engineers, structural engineers, and architects. I'm not, as it were, a culvert expert. So personally, I wouldn't, I would not want to myself, my company, take the risk of having heavy loader equipment over such an old culvert with such extensive erosion, such extensive corrosion. That's not my concern, protecting the company's, resources. My concern is for the neighborhood's response to the safety issues. Should there be collapse? Should there be the neighborhood's concerns about the environmental risks, extensive corrosion? What happens when people go there and dump waste over the edge? How much erosion is actually going into an active water resource? And again, the safety issues of the neighborhood people literally having to go out there and rescue people every single time if there's risk for emergency response vehicles, then that puts the pressure on the neighborhood individuals to respond to those emergency situations.
So to thank you for that. So to connect a little bit the arguments, and correct me if I'm misstating, is your concern with safety is that the additional traffic from construction could worsen the stability around that culvert, resulting in more safety issues down the line. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I would say that even in present, it needs to be assessed even for the present loading. But for more extensive construction loading, I think that the culvert it's almost a no-brainer to reassess the safety of the pipe.
Thank you. And you seem to stop short of suggesting a reconstruction of the culvert would your concern be alleviated if, for example, the company were to if it's possible to use another way to get to the construction site? Would you go as far as saying that?
I'm sorry, could you clarify another way?
Just if it's possible, I'm not super familiar with the roads around there, but is your concern that the company would you say that the company could find another way to get onto their right of way and not go over that road? Would that alleviate your concern?
Well, yes and no. First of all, I don't know that there's another way. Because it's all wetlands area. So, and there's no other passable way back there. So if there were to be a passable way, yes, it's advisable that the company would take it, but at the same time, the long-term safety issues already exist by again, when the clear cutting of the forest happens, there will be beachfront that will be opened up on the northern end of the reservoir that will invite a lot more off-roading, a lot more tourist-related parties, activities on the northern end that we already see there. And I think that the safety issues need to be addressed for the local environmental police response to increased traffic from the new power line. I'm not sure if I've answered your question.
Yeah, you have. I'm just trying to see if I have anything to follow up on that. Yeah, just to get clear on the record, are you saying, Ms. Davis, that the tree clearing for the substation, sorry, not the substation, the tree clearing for the project, tree clearing for the project would invite more illegal traffic because it's more clear cut?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Oh no question. Okay.
And I believe this is in the record, but just for our purposes today, the culvert is under a public road. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And yes, it's a public. Yes.
Thank you. I don't have anything further, I believe.
The only difference between it being a public road now and is again, I mean, there are two conditions for increased loading. So there will be increased traffic no matter what, both from construction and from public access opening up. There are two conditions for increased loading: more construction work trucks from the work itself, and more heavy loader vehicles from the open public access. Like we're finding more and more RVs that are driving and illegally parking in the north parking lot. There will be more RVs, there will be more other heavy loaders when the public at large feels that this is an open access area that's accessible to the public.
Thank you. I don't want to go too far down this route, but to your knowledge, and I understand that you're not, an official or anything, but to your knowledge, has the town looked at this culvert and its situation anytime prior to this?
What I And I don't know. I can't answer that. What I can tell you is that's written in my report is that there has been no upgrading to the culvert since at least well before the 2010 floodwater, where we had 15 inches of, sorry, I lost you for a second, where we had 15 inches of water over the road and significant amount of erosion on the abutments. As an expert, having walked underneath the tubes, I don't see that there's any repair from the original conditions. So I would, besides just road resurfacing, I don't see any repair since the original construction.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Does anyone on the EFSB staff have any follow-up or questions?
I do, yes. Ms. Davis, I'm looking at your affidavit. It says that you are a structural masonry specialist. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And tell me about what education do you have, formal education do you have related to being structural masonry specialist?
I did my graduate studies at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I studied architecture, but I worked with structural masonry engineers, civil engineers that specialize in compression structures, like basically calculation for forces and arches, which in this case, it's a little bit different because I work specially in unreinforced masonry structures, like not with steel, but with just with the earth. For example, where you have over the tube, you need to have enough thickness where you have compression forces for the safety of the road surface. I also did postgraduate study. I didn't get my doctoral study, but I did my doctoral study in Zurich at the ETH Zurich.
Or you did your doctoral study? I didn't quite hear that.
I did my doctoral study in Zurich at the ETH Zurich. It's the
ETH is.
Swiss Federal Institute of Technology.
Okay. And so what degrees do you hold?
I hold a master's of architecture, and before my Bachelor of Fine Arts.
Okay, but your master's in architecture is from MIT?
That's right.
Yes, and you have a bachelor's in fine arts? Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Do you hold any professional licenses?
I do, but I'm not licensed in the state of Massachusetts. I'm licensed as an architect in India, where I practiced for 10 years, but I do hold professional I do hold general and professional liability as a masonry design consultant, effective in New England.
You say you hold general and
So-
professional liability. Let me just ask, it's general and professional liability insurance? Is that
Correct,
right?
yes.
In your capacity
That's
as
correct.
in your capacity as a masonry consultant. Oh, tell me what it was. Masonry.
Yeah, so I mean, I build special structures, and typically what happens is that I produce design drawings or I produce structural analysis, and my design drawings are signed by licensed civil and structural engineers. So, for example, Silman is a company that specializes in masonry engineering. It's based in New York City, that typically signs my drawings.
Okay. I was going to ask you about your experience. You're answering that. But with respect to licenses, so you are licensed as an architect in India, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Are you licensed in any of the states of the United States as an architect?
I'm not. No, I'm registered through NCARB, and I'm in the process of licensure in the United States. But I've only been back in the United States for about 2.5 years, and the licensure process takes some time when you've been practiced and licensed abroad.
Okay. When did you receive your MA from MIT in architecture?
It's an MArch in 2010, so I've been practicing professionally for 13 years.
So it's an MArch. I see it on your in a master's in architecture, and that was in 2010.
That's correct, yeah.
How many years did you have to study at MIT to get that degree?
4.
So 4 postgraduate years.
Yes, 4 years for my master's, yes.
Okay. And did you study structural engineering as part of that program?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Tell me, what courses did you take in structural engineering?
Oh, the titles of the courses,
Well, just how
there
many
were
cour-
there
yeah.
were for architects, there are 2 basic structural engineering courses that are required, and my thesis advisor was a structural engineer that specializes in unreinforced masonry structures. So I took at least another 3 independent studies, and I worked for the professional company of my thesis advisor, and my thesis itself had a certain amount of structural analysis that I actually did.
What was your
So
thesis?
I wasn't. Oh,
What was your thesis topic at MIT?
I was a little bit obscure.
Why don't you just tell me what it was?
It was like my thesis topic was a specialization in thin shell structures. So like large vaults that have a thickness of something like 1 inch, and the structural performance and the design performance and the structural design.
I'm sorry, you dropped out for just a minute. So like large vaults that have a thick, what?
Correct. Large vaults that are very thin in cross section.
Okay, thank you. And then I was going to ask you about your experience. You've talked a little bit about you supplying drawings that will get signed by structural architects, but first of all, you have your own company, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and what does your company do?
My company, well, my company produces design drawings, produces construction drawings, produces some amount of structural analysis, all of which are signed where applicable by civil and structural engineers. There are, right now I'm working in a high-end residential project where I work with wetlands engineers. I just completed a project at Storm King Art Center where I built a 20-foot tall structure that's essentially a reinforced shell, not unlike a culvert, but like much more complex in its engineering.
And you mentioned that the drawings that you produce are signed by structural and civil engineers. Do the structural and civil engineers that you work with, do they ever give you feedback or question what you're doing?
Oh, yes. I mean, in this case, I went to a wetland civil engineer. Like, I didn't ask him to sign this drawing, as I did this on a pro bono basis on a short timetable, and I didn't see that it was necessary to have a wetlands civil engineer sign this, but I did have these drawings and my affidavit reviewed by a wetlands civil engineer to make sure that my assessment was adequate.
Okay. What I'm trying to get at is the extent to which you work completely on your own and the extent to which you work in cooperation with engineers. Is most of what you do sort of back and forth? You do back and forth with the engineers, you get their input, they get yours?
Um, it's always back and forth. It's just a kind of, there are certain things that there are certain additional analyses that the engineers will lead and I will review, or there are certain analyses and construction design and design drawings, which I will lead and they will review. It's both ways, but it is always back and forth because ultimately when they have to sign my drawings, then they're liable for my design considerations.
Thank you. And my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you used to live in the area close to the project, but you don't live there anymore.
Correct. I'm there right now. This is my family's place. I was here for a period of 2.5 years. Technically, I'm since September living in Connecticut, but I'm actually holding 2 residences at the present. So like I'm kind of in between states. It's just like a tri-state move for me.
Okay, I don't have any more questions. Thank you very much, Ms. Davis. Mr. Wong, do you have any other questions?
Thank you.
I do not.
All right, then why don't I turn it over to the company for cross-examination?
Thank you, Presiding Officer Shea. Good morning, Ms. Davis. My name is David Rosenzweig, and I'm representing Eversource and National Grid in this proceeding. I have a few questions for you following up on your testimony today. This is your first time in testifying before the Energy Facility Siting Board, is that right?
Yes, it is.
And I think, based on Presiding Officer Shea's questions, we established that you don't have any degrees or certifications as a civil engineer, do you?
No, I do not.
Are you a registered professional engineer?
No, I am not. That's why I've advised that's why I have advised that a certified professional civil engineer provide a certification of the design performance.
And that's not a certification that you're qualified to provide, is that right?
No, I'm not qualified to give that certification.
Do you know when the road culvert was built?
No, I don't. That's a very good question. I wish I knew the answer to that, but I would guess from the condition of the pipe, I don't know. I mean, it would have been over 30 years ago.
Do you know when the H20 road loading ratings were established as a standard?
Oh, I don't. Do you know the answer to that yourself?
I'd
love to know.
I do, but I will not.
It's a great question. I don't know.
Okay. Do you have any as-built drawings that you have reviewed regarding the culvert and its original design and compare that to its current status?
Could you repeat, please? Could you please repeat?
Have you reviewed any as-built drawings regarding the roadway culvert and compared that to its current status and design?
I have seen no drawings of the culvert besides the quick drawing that I put together for the review.
You mentioned a concern, and I wasn't sure what the context was, that any report or certification that the company might provide would be biased. Is that something that you stated?
I did state that, yes.
And what evidence do you have that the company's assessment would not be technically responsible and would be a biased assessment?
I mean, it's just, I mean, it's just by professional standards, typically, if there's a vested interest in, I don't have any evidence besides just my education around professional standards. If there's a vested interest in a particular project, then typically an external review is given. But if the company is able to provide certification, like a signed affidavit from a civil engineer from the company that he would certify, then I would also accept that.
Okay, so you're not saying the company's testimony in this area can't be trusted, are you?
I don't, I'm sorry. Say again? I'm having some
Sure.
trouble hearing you.
All right, I'll try to speak louder. Are you saying that the company's testimony regarding the condition of the culvert cannot be trusted?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, well, first, I did not read the company's testimony until it was provided by Mr. Wang. I would love to receive a copy of that in to review the company's response. But what I'm saying is that a certified civil engineer should provide a signed affidavit of the load rating and the safety considerations.
Okay, but you're no longer concerned about any bias the company may have with regard to its assessment of the condition of the roads and the culvert, or any certification it might provide regarding the condition of that culvert. Is that fair?
I mean, I would, again, I don't have any special concern in this case. I think that this is a public review. As there's already a review in process, it means that there are some questions to address the safety that haven't already been met. So as there's a public review to address those things, I think that it is advised to have an independent engineer sign. I don't consider that's a big, it's not like a black mark on the name of the company by any standard. I'm not saying specifically that I don't trust the engineers. I think if there's a choice to have an external registered civil engineer, that's better. But if the company provides a signed affidavit from a registered civil engineer showing the load rating out and essentially providing assurances that the culvert can support this traffic, then I would accept that.
I want to also get clarification on your testimony regarding the efficacy of using plates, steel plates, to displace and distribute load over the culvert. I wasn't clear on this, but did you acknowledge that that type of technique can be effective in reducing the load that is experienced over the culvert?
It doesn't reduce the load. It distributes the load. So it actually increases the load, but it allows the load to be distributed over a larger area. The problem is if it's distributed over a larger area that has massive cavitation, like holes up to 5 feet, it doesn't address the cavitation and the erosion related issues. So I myself have specified steel plates over bridges in the past. So I think that a steel plate is a good solution, provided that the base conditions are safe enough.
Have you reviewed the company's testimony about how it would do its steel plating?
No, I have not received any of this testimony.
Have you reviewed the company's testimony and information it's provided for the record regarding what measures it will provide to ensure safety along the roadway and monitor illegal use of the access to the bioreserve?
No, I have not reviewed any of this testimony.
Any information that's come to you regarding the company's plan to use gates, lock gates, I should say, and lock cameras?
No, I have not reviewed this testimony, although what I can say from personal experience is that gates and lock gates don't really prevent traffic in these areas, because the public finds ways to circumvent every lock gate that I've seen in this area.
Do you know what flock cameras are?
Excuse me?
Do you know what flock cameras are?
I do not.
Is it the company's responsibility or the city's responsibility to maintain the safety of the roadway and condition of the culvert?
This is a very good question. I would allow the lawyers to make that um, determination.
But you have no expert testimony to offer on that subject?
I'm definitely not a lawyer, so I think that anything that I can say on that topic would be purely conjecture.
Does the company have the incentive to make sure that the use of that roadway and the culvert is safe for passage of its vehicles during construction?
Yes, certainly, because the value of the construction trucks is quite expensive. So should there be a collapse of the culvert or a collapse of the edge of the roadway, I'm certain that the company would not want its resources to be at risk.
Not only its resources, but its personnel as well as its construction schedule, might that also be affected?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I work in construction. I understand when you have when I'm personally working on a project right now that I have to assess the load capacity of the bridge because we have massive amounts of stone and soil and other materials, which is passing over. So this is something that I am certainly I have experience with.
So would you acknowledge that there is a shared interest between the company's construction activities as it relates to maintaining the safety of the culvert and the neighborhoods, the neighborhood association and the neighborhood in which you were residing?
I think it's shared, but I think that it's a very off-site condition. And I haven't really ever seen any monitoring in this area. Not to say that there isn't monitoring by the company, but oftentimes the emergency response that I have seen in this area has been so much driven by the partnership between the local community members that put on their waders, that go out and hold hands with the police officers and with the environmental police officers, that I see that a lot of the monitoring and safety concerns has fallen onto the shoulders of the community members.
And just to confirm, are you familiar or aware of testimony the company has offered about its discussions with the city of Fall River regarding the status of the culvert?
No, this is my first presence in the review, so I am not up to date with the official response from the company.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Nothing further from the company.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
Matt. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Roseweg. Ms. Riley, you have the opportunity to do what's called redirect, which means not go into anything new, but if you wanted Ms. Davis to clarify an answer, then you could ask about that.
Yes, please. Thank you. Ms. Davis, is the culvert on a public roadway or is it behind a locked gate?
The culvert is on a public roadway.
Okay, so you can't prevent access going over that culvert.
Is that a question?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Also, I wanted to clarify, could you please list your teaching experience just in order to ascertain your experience?
I've taught structural design courses at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology as a lead teaching assistant. I presently am teaching a materials course in the spring of 2024 at RISD in the landscape architecture and interior design departments.
Anything international?
Yes, I taught for almost 3 years in Switzerland and Zurich, and I was a co-director of a company, and I taught a quite number of different specialized masonry courses and civil engineering, well, structural engineering courses at the Oroville Earth Institute in South India, which was representative of UNESCO chair and partnered with the Comos National Sites and etc. So it was and partnered with the International Center for Earth and Construction that's based in Grenoble, France. So I also was teaching there to some capacity. And I was teaching also in the field as a member of this organization. I was teaching in the field for in developing contexts in Sri Lanka and Algeria and Ethiopia and Singapore also.
I think that's enough. Can I don't know, not sure whether I can ask what her biggest concerns are for adverse outcomes, plausible adverse outcomes?
Mr. Rosenzweig, do you have an objection to that question?
I think that's within the scope of examination of, I don't have an objection.
Thank you. Go ahead, please, Ms. Davis.
Like physical adverse outcomes, or the physical adverse outcomes are as is, there could be significant undeterred erosion on both sides of the culvert. There is risk to vehicles sliding off of the edge, as has been in the past. There is I can't say that I can't say myself that there's no collapse risk, because the culvert is in really bad condition. So I can't put that outside of the scope, but that's really not my scope to weigh in on. So there are collapse risks. There are significant erosion risks, which are public safety issues. There is real adverse impact from an environmental standpoint, given as it is and not backup reservoir, but an existing water reservoir, because there's zero scour protection. There is zero existence of adequate wing walls to direct water flow to prevent erosion in a water resource. There's zero inhibition for dumping in the area, which means that we often find vehicles or other waste dumped in that area because it's convenient for people from the city to come and dump over the edge of the abutment. There are adverse emergency response concerns for safety. There is an active gun range just beyond this culvert. There is a lot of traffic. I think that's it, but that's a lot, you know.
Yep. I have just one more question. Based on the existing condition of the culvert as is, do you believe that tree clearing to the north and to the south of the culvert would further destabilize the culvert?
Oh yeah, I mean, given that there's no erosion control at all, the only thing that's preventing significant erosion of the roadway is essentially just like bramble. So any additional clear cutting either to the north or to the, well, clear cutting to the south is not any more tree cutting directly in the area around that would result in more erosion for sure.
I don't know how
Have I understood
can't
the question?
Okay, yeah, I got another question for the engineer. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. Mr. Rosenzweig, do you have any recross?
Just very brief. Do you have any degrees or professional experience in environmental science?
Degrees, no. Professional experience, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And have you done an environmental study regarding this project and its proposed tree removal as to the degree to which that will cause erosion? Have you provided that type of analysis or done that type of report?
I haven't reported anything specifically about that. I've addressed the issue of significant erosion. So in that regard, yes. I mean, I've advised on a bridge, an unreinforced masonry bridge to the north of Massachusetts, where this exact question has come up. Remove the trees or not remove the trees. There's already problems of the stability of the abutments. It's the same thing in this condition. I mean, in this situation, rather. But often because I work with the engineering of unreinforced structures, often soil retention and water management, particularly in wetlands, is something that's like a repeat theme in my work.
You also mentioned in your responses to Ms. Riley's questions, you were concerned about vehicles falling off the roadway into the culvert. Is that right?
Yes, there's one case of a boat going over the edge that I'm aware of. I wasn't present at the time. I don't know about other vehicles that have gone over the edge there, but it's like a regular occurrence where vehicles that are not equipped for four-wheel drive off-roading get stranded along the Quanapog Road or the other north-south road that either the EPOs or the EPOs in concert with the neighborhood association members or just the neighborhood association members respond to. Regular, like, I don't know, every 2 weeks in the summer or more, I don't know.
Have you reviewed the company's plans to install guardrails along the roadway culvert in this area?
I've heard a rumor, but I have not reviewed these documents, no.
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
I would just say a
That was nothing
guardrails
further.
on the I would just say a guardrails on the edge, if the stabilization of the slope hasn't been addressed, would be like a real waste of money.
So you'd want to make sure the guardrails were effective in the way they were installed. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Davis.
Thank you.
Ms. Riley, do you have any, thank you, Mr. Rosenzweig. Mr. Riley, do you have any questions that would just relate to the issues Mr. Rosenzweig raised?
No, I do have two questions for Jamie Duran.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Is he in there? Okay. Hi,
I'm
Jamie,
here.
how are you?
Good morning.
Could I just ask, did you or did you not say that you assumed the culvert was built to H20 standards?
Yes, we reached out to the city engineer to see if we can get as-built data, and I did say that for our assumption now is that we believe it was built to H20 standards, because since it's a public road, and the assumption is that it, would be passed over by like a large vehicle such as a public fire truck.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, all right. Is there any way that you can pull up the CNA, sorry, CNA I-5-1, page 4 of 6? I'm not sure whether that's possible.
I'm sorry, it's
CNA-I-5 in parentheses 1, page 4 of 6. Map document. And I was hoping that Jamie could just show us where the tree clearing will be on that document to the north and south of the culvert.
Yeah, I have a hard copy here, but if you want to give me a second, I'll see if I can pull up the document so I can share it.
Even if you could just clarify how many feet to the north and how many feet to the south of the culvert the tree clearing will be.
Well, let me see. I have a drawing. I don't have that specific drawing up, Ms. Riley. I'll share. Mr. Shea, if it's okay with you, would it be okay if I shared my screen for a minute?
Yes, Mr. Wong, he's the host of the meeting. Mr. Wong?
You should be able to, Mr. Durand.
Okay. Bear with me. Sorry. Can you see my screen?
I can. It says started screen sharing, and now I can see what you've put up.
Okay. This drawing is not the exact one that Ms. Riley showed. I can call that one up, but I just happen to have this one on. So
could you tell us where that is in the record?
Please?
I'm sorry, could you tell us where that drawing is in the record? Does it have an exhibit number?
I believe actually, Mr. Shea, that this is the project alignment drawings that were included in the supplemental, the single environmental impact report submitted by National Grid and Eversource.
Okay.
Mr. Durand, can you give us a page number, Mr. Durand? Because
this is a proposed. This is figure 1-3, page 22 of 28. I mean, if this is confusing, I would just need another minute to call up the drawings that Ms. Riley asked about.
Just for purposes of Mr. Shea, the SEIR that this document is from, Mr. Shea, was marked by the companies as Exhibit 4, Exhibit EN-4, the single environmental impact report.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay. Well, I'll just proceed to show here. So this here, this is Quannapoag Road, right in this location. This is Copacut Road, the intersection of Copacut Road and Quannapoag Road. Quannapoag Road goes northeast. This is a Copacut Reservoir that we've been referring to. This is the right-of-way. You can see like it says 53. That's existing pole 53, and then to the south of that, you can see it shows 114. That's the proposed 114 line, and we've been talking about the Copacut River. So the Copacut River, comes out of these wetland areas, is channelized through this wetland, and then these symbols here, these orange symbols, indicate the location of the Copacut River culvert that we've been discussing this morning. So if you, this black and white dashed line is the northern edge of the existing transmission line right of way. To the south here, you can see there's a dashed black and white line, which is the southern boundary. And then if you could proceed to the, to the east or west, it turns to brown. This brown and white line is the edge of proposed tree removal. And so in this particular area of the New England Power right-of-way, as we indicated, I think yesterday, we'd be clearing up to about 60 feet of width of trees. And so the southern edge of the clearing does go south of the culvert in this location.
Do you have a measurement how far south of the culvert?
I don't have a specific measurement at my fingertips. That's something I could probably provide. If we have a break or something, I could get that number for you.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate it.
Well, do you want to ask a record request, or do we just want to do this when we take our next break? Well, I suppose we could take a break fairly soon. Mr. Durand, how long do you think it would take you to get the number?
Not very long. I just need to make a call to our GIS specialist, and he can probably call up this plan drawing and scale it off for me.
All right, then we'll see if we can get that done today, and if not, we'll submit it as a record request.
Okay, I will do that.
Thank you, Mr. Dran. Go ahead, Ms. Riley.
I have no further questions. Thank you very much.
Do you have, Ms. Riley, do you have questions for cross-examination for any of the company's witnesses?
No, I think I've gotten all my questions answered for the time being. Thank you.
Mr. Rosenzweig, do you have redirect?
If I could just have maybe a break to review the testimony of the last day or so and see if we have anything to ask.
Sure, it's about 11:15. Why don't we take a 15-minute break, and I'll see you all here at 11:30. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Davis? Could I ask you, you said you were talking about international teaching, and you said partnered with the Comos National Site. How do you spell Comos?
Oh, ICOMOS is ICOMOS. That's the International Council on Monuments and Sites.
Right, thank you.
Okay, we have an impressive array of people back here. Why don't we go back on the record? Mr. Rosenzweig, you were going to take a look. Do you have any questions?
I think we do. I think we can provide the distance measurement that Ms. Riley was looking for. And in sort of doing that, I would just ask one redirect question to our panel to address a particular issue that's associated with that, if I could.
The distance measurement, is that the one that Mr. Duran was going to look up?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, please go ahead.
So picking up where we left off before the break, I'd ask sort of our witnesses, have you been able to identify the distance between where the tree removal that we intend to undertake would be in comparison to the location of the Copacut Road?
Yeah, this is Jamie Duran from Power Engineers. So if you're standing on the southern end of that Copacut River culvert, we're approximately 58 feet to the south is the edge of clearing. So between the southern edge of the downstream edge of the culvert to the edge of tree removal is about 58 feet. And if I could add to that, Mr. Rosenberg, a couple of items here is, it was mentioned, removal of trees could potentially create some destabilization of soils. Although we're removing trees in this area, we don't plan to do any grubbing or remove any stumps in this location. The only stumping that would need to be done anywhere on the right of way is where a structure needs to go. And there are no transmission structures proposed at this location. Also, in addition to the Copacut River culvert, we all know the Copacut Reservoir is just downstream. And there's also some other features on that right of way. I guess I'll call them kind of quote unquote, historic features. There's some walls. Looks like an old culvert that used to be part of an old
I'm sorry, an old what?
An old culvert that was part of an old woods road. And so with all of those different features, we have met with the National Grid Forestry Department in the field, and we do have specialized equipment like a feller buncher, which has like a long extendable arm that can go in and remove most of these trees, if not all of them. without having to, disturb all the soils in the area. So we can be kind of selective in how the removal is done, which will be an added mitigation measure to, protecting the culvert and trying to minimize soils near the river and near the edge of the Copacut Reservoir. The other thing is, this will all be monitored during construction. So if we do observe some type of problem, some type of soil erosion, if the existing soil erosion control measures that we have in place for some reason are not adequate, we would make corrective actions. As part of what we've indicated in our discovery responses is we do understand, as I think Ms. Davis indicated, there will be clearing along the northern edge of the Copacut Reservoir. So in response to that, we understand, that may open it up, for people to get to the edge of the reservoir, is we are proposing supplemental plantings to provide a vegetated buffer along the northern edge of the reservoir, and also to, increase wildlife habitat. Those would be lower plantings, wetland and upland shrubs that would be planted. And I think in closing, after construction, the next measure of construction is, stabilization of the right-of-way, restoration, removal of construction debris, any seeding, mulching, any establishment of other type of stormwater best management practices that are required. So, there is land disturbance during construction, but after construction, our intent is to stabilize the right-of-way. I'm not sure if there's anyone else from our project team that would like to add to that or not.
This is Erin. Jamie, I think you covered it. Our best practice is to ensure that the right-of-way is as if it was, before the project and afterwards. So I think, all these measures that we intend to take and what you'll see out there during construction will, demonstrate, our dedication to making sure that we're good stewards. So I think what you've articulated here is just that, all the measures that we plan on take to minimize that environmental disturbance.
Thank you, witnesses. Anybody else have something to add or okay, that's it from our panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenzweig. Ms. Riley, do you have any questions just on the testimony we've had since the break?
Yes, just to clarify what Mr. Durand had said, I just was hoping that he could tell me the use of the fellow buncher, would that necessitate the fellow buncher being on Quanapog over the culvert?
I don't have all of the specific schedule for forestry, but I guess I would make the assumption that the fellow buncher would probably use Quannapoag Road as one of the means of access to the right-of-way. Because as you know, there's clearing required on both sides of the culvert. But the same thing as we propose, we would still use the steel plating as part of the forestry practices, not just the construction practices for the project.
Gotcha. And the vegetated buffer that you had mentioned, how high are they? The buffer.
Could you repeat that question?
Yes, the vegetative buffer that you had mentioned. Could you tell me like how high they would be when they're planted?
Yeah, so we're thinking of shrubs that provide wildlife habitat value, like winterberry, highbush blueberry, viburnum.
I'm sorry, like winterberry what?
Highbush blueberry, winterberry, dogwoods, viburnums, which are arrowwoods, those types of species. And those species can get up to, upwards of, 12 to 15 feet in height. We don't necessarily want to go too much higher than that. You start getting into the 15 to 20 foot range, and we start to worry about things getting into the wire zone.
Thank you. Is there any way to cover your erosion remediation plans for us, or show which areas along the water's edge on the Copacut Reservoir the tree cutting will go to the water's edge, necessitating environmental police access to enforce legal use?
If your question is, do we have plans that show edge of tree clearing? I would say yes. I believe the plans we submitted with the petition to the EFSB, and then the plans that we submitted as to MEPA, Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act unit, the single environmental impact report. Those plans show the edge of proposed tree removal as well, including where we are close to the Copacabana Reservoir. And the other thing we'll do, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make one other thing clear is one of the things that we do prior to construction is, well, a couple things. I think Chris and Erin mentioned yesterday, we need to get a NIPDES permit under the construction general permit, which requires us to put together a stormwater pollution prevention plan and a sediment and erosion control plan. So we will be doing that for the entire project. And we also, for both companies, I think they have different names. One is like an environmental field issue or an environmental compliance plan, where after we've obtained our permits, we put a document together for the contractors, which outlines all the commitments we've made, all the permit conditions, includes all the plans, erosion controls. And that becomes a document used during construction. And we give environmental training to the contractors so they know what the expectations are for environmental conditions. And that, I'll call it an environmental field issue, kind of acts as the leading document for our environmental compliance monitors that are in the field.
Great, thank you, Jamie. Does the MEPA plan stipulate how many feet of water's edge they'll be tree cutting to? Excuse me.
But I believe in our MEPA filing, we do provide the approximate, distances as we did before, like it's average 60 feet of clearing. We do provide impact tables about, how many uplands of forest will be, tree removal, how much is in wetlands. So to that extent, that's explained in our.
I'm sorry. So to that extent, what?
To that extent, the tree removal acreage is explained in the single environmental impact report.
Okay, but there's not a measurement in terms of length of water's edge that tree clearing will abut.
Well, it can certainly, those measurements can certainly be scaled off of the plan drawings. The plan drawings do have a scale with them. So okay. Yes.
Could you make a rough assessment of how many linear feet that would be along the water's edge?
Just a very rough guesstimate, and this is something I could check. I think we're looking at probably at least 500 feet.
Okay, thank you.
This is sorry, Mr. Shea. This is David Barron from National Grid. I just wanted to remind Ms. Riley that I think it was over this past summer that we had surveyed and staked and flagged in the field the limits of clearing in this locale, and subsequently reviewed that in the field with Ms. Riley and with Mr. Mike Labossiere, who's the Fall River Water Board member and superintendent of the Watuppa Reservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. Does anyone have any other questions?
Mr. Shea, I have a follow-up, not a follow-up, just a quick clarification. It might be clear, but could the company just clarify to me if any of the local permits that you intend to obtain from the city of Fall River would pertain to the use of the road over the culvert, or if any part of that review includes any sort of look at the use of the road over the culvert.
This is Jamie Duran from Power Engineers. As I think I was indicated earlier, this road is a public road, and we understand obviously from today there are concerns about the use of Quannapoag Road, at least the culvert. So we have the city understands that that's one of our planned access routes, and we do have an existing RFI or request for information in with the city engineer to try and obtain information about the condition or as-built condition of that culvert. I think has been mentioned by I think Aaron Werski and Dave Barron. We have had some site visits in the past, and there have been representatives from the police department, the City of Fall River Water Board, and the fire department. So to that extent, they know that we plan to use the road. I don't know offhand if we actually necessarily need a permit to use the public road. You know, if we were to have to close the road down, we would need some type of, police detail, but we don't have any intention of closing Copacut or Quannapoag Road.
Thank you, Mr. Durand. Ms. Wartke?
I think one thing to just add, just related to the Copacut itself and the sensitive resources around it, we will be filing a notice of intent with the Fall River Conservation Commission, who has a vested interest in making sure that those valuable resources are protected. So there is another level of review that will come at the local level for those resources specifically.
And that would pertain to just the effects of the project on mapped wetlands. Is that correct, Ms. Worski?
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Correct. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions? Not hearing anything, then hearing any questions. The next thing I'd like to do is I'm moving that all the exhibits that been marked for identification in this proceeding be moved into the record as evidence. Are there any objections?
Company has none.
Ms. Riley, do you have any objections? Let the record reflect Ms. Riley has shook her head no. All right, then so moved. All the exhibits marked for identification will be admitted into the record. This does include also the responses to record requests that haven't been submitted yet. If when a record request response is submitted, if anyone has an objection to the record request response, then the time to make it would be when the record request response is submitted. I believe all the record requests were issued yesterday, Wednesday, and we usually have 5 business days. Let me ask Mr. Rosenzweig, how realistic is it for us to expect to get responses to the record requests by Wednesday of next week?
Good question.
Okay.
We had a brief conversation offline at the outset before the hearing, and I am reasonably confident we'll have them all done within a week's time. If we don't, we will so advise the presiding officer and all parties about what the expected extension that might be necessary would be.
Okay. The reason I ask is that we usually set briefing schedules based on the response to the record request. We don't ask anyone to start their briefing until the record request responses are in. If it's possible, Mr. Rosenzweig, do you think you'd give me an outside date when you feel pretty confident that the record request responses would be returned?
If I could do that by the end of the day, that would be most useful, just to confirm with the team about the timing for those responses.
Okay.
I would suggest that if we're going to talk about briefing schedule now, we operate on the presumption that we will have them in within a week's time, and if some adjustment is necessary because we need more time, that we take that into account at a later point in time.
Ms. Riley,
Could you just clarify briefing for me because I'm not a lawyer?
sure. Sure. The brief is what parties submit at the end of a case and says, it goes over the evidence and explains, it's the argument. And, you see on TV shows, the lawyers argue to the jury. There's no jury here, but it's the same principle. It's argument. So it basically says, okay, this is the evidence, and this is the evidence that supports my argument, and my argument is X, Y, or Z.
Got it. I can do that. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. All right. Why don't we set a tentative briefing schedule? Let me go off the record for a second. Mr. Rosenzweig, do you think it's better to 2 or 3 weeks from I'll ask you also, Ms. Riley, 2 or 3 weeks from the 13th, the day that the record requests are due?
I'm going to suggest 3 weeks, not that we couldn't do it sooner, but with the holiday coming at the back end of that 2-week period, maybe the initial brief would be best scheduled for the first week of January, or by the end of the first week of January, something like that.
So 3 weeks from next Wednesday would be Wednesday, January 3rd. All right, Ms. Riley, how does that sound to you?
Bob, you might want to explain the fact, I don't know if Ms. Riley knows the fact that we have initial briefs and reply briefs, and I'm assuming we're going with simultaneous initial, simultaneous reply, just so she understands how the briefing schedule works.
Sure. Okay. So yes, that's a very good point. Yeah, Ms. Riley. So the initial brief is your argument, and it will be the company's argument. And then you look at their brief. You both have to submit your initial brief at the same time. You look at your brief and you see if there's anything that you want to say in response to something that they've said. And that's actually often where you get the really meaty issues. Like, this is the point we disagree on. This is the evidence. I think it's not credible. Someone else thinks it's credible, or I think you get X deduction from Y evidence, and someone else thinks you don't. So the reply brief is then a chance for you to argue about the company's arguments and for the company to argue about your arguments.
Got it. Thank you very much for taking the time to clarify. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think just the other point I would like to make is, so in your initial brief, Ms. Riley, you're going to lay out what you think your argument is, what you think the evidence shows regarding, impacts to your community, and the company is going to lay out their arguments about this is what the evidence shows regarding their petition and their request in this situation. So you lay that out in your initial briefs, and then you get a chance to see each other's arguments and respond to them in the reply briefs. That, I think, hopefully Mr. Rosenzweig would agree that that's basically what folks are doing in the briefing schedule.
Bless you. Thank you.
Okay, so the initial brief, now, if something goes wrong and Mr. Rosenzweig, and you can't get us the answers to the record requests, that's not the end of, by a week from yesterday, that's not the end of the world. You can just tell us when it will be, and then I will adjust the briefing schedule accordingly and issue it.
Bob, can I just make one suggestion?
Yeah, sure.
Didn't mean to interrupt you. I think your original procedural schedule contemplated initial briefs, simultaneous initial briefs on January 8th, which is actually the Monday of the second week, or just after the first week, and then reply briefs January 22nd. We were just looking at that. I would have no objection if that continued to be the schedule.
Okay.
That makes sense to us.
It makes sense because we, it is the holidays, and so it's people are going to want some time off to relax. So what do you think about that, Ms. Riley? Would that be acceptable to you? Initial briefs on January 8th and then reply briefs on January 22nd?
Yes, I think I'm the only one with little people here, so time over the holidays, especially when they're off of school, I would greatly appreciate that time to work through. Thank you.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's so important when your children are little. I'm tempted to go back on the record and just talk about the record request dates and the briefing dates, and then go off the record and conclude for the day, or conclude for the day and then go off the record. But does anyone want to bring up anything else that we should discuss before I do that? Ms. Riley?
Did Mr. Wang have questions for me? He mentioned yesterday that he had some direct questions for me.
No, I misspoke. I only had questions for the witness. So you're the representative, and there's a little bit of a distinction. Sorry about that.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. So why don't we go back on the record? We've had a discussion off the record, and we agreed on the following things. The responses to the record requests will be due Wednesday of next week. And if they're not due, then just like an email addressed to everybody that would say when they might be due, when they expect it to be due. Barring anything unforeseen, we're going to have a deadline of January 8th for the initial briefs, and a deadline of January 22nd for the reply briefs. About to go off the record. Thank you all for being here, but does anyone want to mention anything before we do? Okay. I want to thank you all for showing up, and I want to thank all the witnesses for being so well prepared. It's really, it really makes my job a lot easier. And counsel and Ms. Riley, of course, thank you for being here as well. We're off the record, and we conclude the hearings in this proceeding, and we're off the record. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.